Well, good morning. First of all, I would like to thank you to the organization committee to invite me. And first of all, I would like to so sorry because my English is more or less regular and I have to read my conference, but I try to read and speak slowly that you can understand me. Well, my goal is to share two research published last year in the journal Dementia and Geriatric Cognitive Disorders, extra in collaboration with my research group. This is the index about my presentation. Well, Alzheimer's disease, I'm a neuropsychologist and my specialty is dementia. Alzheimer's disease is the leading cause of dementia and is characterized by a progressive decline of cognitive function which typically begins with memory impairment. The last global report on Alzheimer's disease published in 2012 indicates that in 2030 there will be 66 million of Alzheimer's disease patients, increasing to 150 million in 2050. The World Health Organization data published too in 2012 are even more alarming. A new case of Alzheimer's disease is diagnosed every 4 seconds in the world, with an estimated 60 million to 22 million subjects suffering from dementia over the next 40 years unless an effective treatment or cure is found. The last recommendations by the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Communication and the Association of Related Alzheimer's Disease in the United States, NICS-ADRA, for the new criteria diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease disorders and mild cognitive impairment, MCE, emphasize the importance of early detection, broaden the diagnostic criteria to items such as biomarkers, neuroimaging of specific injuries, and a battery of physiological tests that is as complete as possible. Given the fact that MCE is a taxonomy that has become particularly relevant in last year and based on the ever-growing literature on the subject that speaks of a high percentage of patients progressing to Alzheimer's disease, the recent results talking about a 50% of patients with MCE progressing to Alzheimer's disease in 3 years of evolution, 50%. It's interesting to look for factors that may influence the evolution towards dementia in order to establish early screening and therapeutic measures. This is not only due to the repercussions of detecting MCE cases, but also to the fact that regarding diagnosis, there still do not exist diagnostic instruments that are based on the recent recommendations. There are two symptoms very interesting to me in relation to dementia: leukoaraiosis and apathy. The presence of leukoaraiosis and the high prevalence of apathy have been addressed together in very few studies. This is why the two concepts that have gained prominence in recent years in relation to dementia will be addressed in this study. Our research is a pioneer study in our country, in Spain, as it addresses the prevalence of both processes in patients with MCE and Alzheimer's disease, according to recent consensus criteria that have been developed, especially to diagnosis of apathy, MCE, and Alzheimer's disease. Apathy and leukoaraiosis are mostly detected in asymptomatic individuals over 60 and in subjects with cognitive impairment, particularly in cases of cerebrovascular disease or vascular risk factors for ischemic stroke. The term leukoaraiosis is a non-specific radiological term found in computed tomography or magnetic resonance imaging and denotes patch of hypo or hyperintensity mainly in periventricular white matter and subcortical regions. These ischemic lesions originate from an affectation of small vascular vessels and hence are also known as non-specific white matter chains and small vessel ischemia. These lesions are frequently detected in elderly patients with a higher prevalence than individuals with cerebrovascular disease, hypertension, or diabetes, which are known to act as risk factors in the elderly. Leukoaraiosis is therefore a finding of heterogeneous neuroimaging that may be associated with various clinical and pathological situations, as depression, for example, with a range of very few prevalence, since there is not yet a clear consensus in the scientific community for its correct identification. Today, there is evidence of a significant relationship between leukoaraiosis and impairment cognitive functions as language, memory, attention, and so on. But there are few studies linking specifically leukoaraiosis and dementia. The prevalence is unclear because there is no consensus in the literature reviewed. On the other hand, of the possible emotional affective disorders that can present with dementia, the most prevalent is apathy. The term apathy is frequently used in the neuropsychiatric literature. Apathy can be defined as a persistent deficit of motivation, a lack or decrease in feelings, emotions, or interest that give rise to a significant reduction in self-generated goal-directed behavior. Apathy is the most frequent neuropsychiatric symptom in Alzheimer's disease and other dementias, and is associated with increased cognitive and functional impairment and a high burden on the caregivers. There are indications that apathy could be a predictor of progression of dementia. Given its high prevalence in dementia cases in almost all studies, a study from 2008 and published in the journal European Psychiatry developed a set of several international associations to establish a consensus on the diagnostic criteria for apathy, mainly in Alzheimer's disease cases. Following the new consensus, especially in cases of dementia, this study was proposed with the intent of establishing the prevalence and possible association of leukoaraiosis and apathy in two clinical groups, one with MCEs, a prodromal state, as a possible Alzheimer's disease, another group with Alzheimer's disease. To our knowledge, is the first study of its kind serving the two above factors, leukoaraiosis and apathy, conducted in Spain using the new diagnostic criteria. The present work is a cross-sectional descriptive multicenter study. The sample consisted in 109 patients diagnosed with probably Alzheimer's disease and 59 diagnosed with MCE by a neurologist according to the latest diagnostic criteria of the NICMS-ADRA. All patients were residents in 7 nursing homes located in 7 cities in Spain, were ages 65 years or older and of both sexes. The subjects with Alzheimer's disease are evolutionary stage 5 and 6 of the Global Deterioration Scale and Functional Assessment Staging. Reasons for exclusion were present sensory deficits that could prevent them from responding to tests and being diagnosed with depression by a psychiatrist and or taking antidepressant treatment. Sociodemographic variables of age, sex, years of schooling, most prevalent chronic disease, and scores on the following instruments were collected. For the evaluation of apathy, the MPE apathy subscale was used. It's one of the most beautifully used scales and follows the consensus criteria established in 2008. It's part of a larger questionnaire, the neuropsychiatric inventory, which to date has proven to be the most valid and reliable assessment of neuropsychiatric symptoms in subjects with dementia. The score ranges from 0 to 12, with a higher score revealing more severe apathy, and sets the cutoff at 4. For this study, a Spanish adaptation of the MPE scale was used. For the diagnosis of leukoaraiosis, magnetic resonance imaging were performed with sounding devices of the same type. The results were interpreted by 2 blinded neuroradiologists as to diagnosis of the patient and the study itself. They followed the directions of the Facekas scale, which is one of the most frequently used scales to classify the presence of the intensity of leukoaraiosis. Well, the Bartel test was administered to assess the level of dependence, and finally, the participants were submitted to the mini-mental state examination test using the validated Spanish version, the MEC, to assess the cognitive status. Well, Table 1 shows the distribution of the groups by sociodemographic variables, background, Bartel scores, and MEC, the mini-mental, along with the statistical significant test performed. Of the 109 subjects with Alzheimer's disease, 74% were female, had a mean age of 82.3 years, and 57.1% were at stage 5 or 6 of the evolution of Alzheimer's disease. Regarding the 59 patients with MCE, 64.3% were women 7.8 years. It was found that there were no significant difference between the groups for age, sex, years of schooling, as well as for diabetes and dyslipidemia. But there were significant difference in hypertension, MEC, and Bartle score, resulting in the Alzheimer's disease group being dependent on assistance and exhibiting a greater degree of cognitive impairment. Regarding the presence of leukoaraiosis and apathy, the results for both groups are presented in Figure 1 and Figure 2. They are coded in the presence or absence of diagnosis, with the significance test revealing significant difference between the groups, with greater presence of both apathy and leukoaraiosis in the older group with Alzheimer's disease. On the other hand, in relation to chronic disease present, as can be seen in Figure 2, all the patients who have hypertension were thus with a higher percentage of leukoaraiosis compared to other diseases such as dyslipidemia and diabetes. Upon performing a test for statistical significance between those with and those without leukoaraiosis, statistical significance differences were only shown for hypertension. Moreover, a correlation study between the different parameters was carried out. The existence of a positive correlation between age and leukoaraiosis, but not between age and apathy, was observed. A correlation study between apathy and leukoaraiosis was also found. In addition, the results of the correlation between the stage of Alzheimer's disease and apathy were significant, as were those between Alzheimer's disease and the grade of leukoaraiosis. Regarding the presence of leukoaraiosis and MEC at the mini-mental, and between apathy and MEC, a negative correlation was also found in the two cases. Well, our results showed a high prevalence of leukoaraiosis and apathy in Alzheimer's disease patients, and to a lesser but still significant extent in patients with MCE. Apathy and leukoaraiosis negatively correlated with patient score using the MEC, the mini-mental, indicating greater cognitive apathy and increasing presence of leukoaraiosis impairment in these patients. Leukoaraiosis showed a positive correlation with age occurring to a greater degree in older patients. Furthermore, a significant relationship was found between the presence of apathy and leukoaraiosis in both MCE and Alzheimer's disease patients, a finding that has been little studied and may open new avenues of research linking the presence of both as a prognostic factor for the evolution and severity of dementia. The results are consistent with the findings of other studies that found a high prevalence of apathy and leukoaraiosis in patients with dementia. Different research suggested that apathy in Alzheimer's disease is a marker of evolution characterized by a more rapid progression of cognitive, functional, and emotional impairment compared to patients without apathy. As far for the strong presence of leukoaraiosis and its association with impaired cognitive function, these results are consistent with other research that indicates a positive significant relationship with cognitive impairment. A greater presence of leukoaraiosis leads to a greater cognitive deterioration. We also found a significant relationship between age and leukoaraiosis, especially in older patients who have higher prevalence of leukoaraiosis as confirmed in previous studies. As far as we know, field studies have jointly analyzed the presence of apathy and leukoaraiosis together in dementia cases. The presence of both in Alzheimer's disease patients is reported in the literature, but the heterogeneity of results is a clear indication of the need to continue reaching consensus diagnostic criteria. In conclusion, the presence of apathy and leukoaraiosis is associated with cognitive impairment and may prove to be a predictor of future dementia through the study of patients with NCE. The growing age population, which is associated with a higher prevalence of leukoaraiosis and chronic disease such as hypertension, coupled with advance in neuroimaging techniques and the establishment of new criteria for detecting apathy, establishes a scenario that advocates the early detection of dementia to establish preventive treatments that is advanced in the general population. And this is my email. If you have any questions in relation with my result, please write me. And that's all, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. For this very clear presentation, we have 3 minutes for, for one question.
It's very clear. My English is perfect.
Is everybody having a question? Okay, thank you very much. For this very clear presentation, we have 3 minutes for one question. Is everybody having a question?
It's very clear. My English is perfect.
Okay. About the specificity of your results, because you said that, apathy is not a very specific symptom.
Not.
And what you found in the brain is also not a specific symptom. So what are the chance results? You just bring two unspecific
leukoaraiosis is very, very frequent, and apathy is the most frequent neuropsychiatric symptom in the dementia cases, especially in Alzheimer's disease. And in a lot of research, we detect apathy before the beginning of Alzheimer's disease. And the research line now is to detect these unspecific symptoms to be a screening, to detect it early, the cases of NCE of Alzheimer's disease. And there are a lot of research centered in these asymptomatic symptoms, especially in the cases of apathy.